In the winter of 1887, in the Bitterroot Range of Montana Territory, a trapper named Aldous Kane built the biggest fire his partner had ever seen, 3 feet high, roaring. You could feel it from 20 yards out. He fell asleep beside it, boots off, coat rolled under his head. His partner found him at first light, frozen solid, fire still burning 6 inches from his hand. Everybody in that outfit said the same thing for the next 50 years, said the fire must have died in the night, said he must have let it go out. It never went out. There were still coals under the ash when they found him. The fire didn't fail Aldous Kane, friend. Something else did. And it's the same thing that's going to fail you the first cold night you ever spend outside, unless somebody tells you the truth about it before you find out the hard way. Here's the twist. It was never about the size of the fire. What killed him has a name. It's called ground conduction, and it is the single most misunderstood piece of the oldest skill on Earth, building a fire that actually keeps a man alive through the night. I'm going to walk you through the whole method today, the one the mountain men actually used. No lighter fluid, no fire starter cubes, no matches. Under $50 in gear, most of which you probably already own. And I'm going to build it with you piece by piece, the same way it was handed to me, until you get to the one step that separates a man who wakes up from a man who doesn't. We'll get there. Stay with me on this one because it's the reason I'm making this video in the first place. I'm not going to pretend I invented any of this. My grandfather taught me to build fire before he taught me to read. Grew up on a ridge in the Bitterroots where the power still goes out for a week at a time most winters, and a fire that fails isn't an inconvenience. It's the whole ball game. Everything in this video I've built with my own 2 hands, more times than I can count, in weather that would put most modern campers in a hospital. Before we get into it, hit subscribe. Not for me, for you. Because the skills we dig back up around here, you're going to want the next one, and the one after that. The algorithm buries this stuff on purpose. Doesn't pay to teach a man he doesn't need a $300 propane heater. There are 5 pieces to this method. 5 in order. Skip one, you get cold. Skip the last one, you get what Aldous Kane got. Most people who try this in their backyard get the first 3 close enough to feel proud of themselves. It's the 4th where store-bought campers usually quit. But the 5th is the one nobody talks about, and it's the one that actually matters. We build to it piece by piece. Piece 1. The sight. This starts before you strike a single spark. It starts with where you decide to kneel down. Picture a stand of lodgepole pine, wind coming steady out of the northwest, temperature dropping fast with the sun. A man who doesn't know what he's doing picks the first flat spot he sees and starts gathering wood. A man who does know spends 5 minutes walking first. You want 3 things from your sight, and old-timers checked all 3 before they ever pulled a knife. Wind block. A fallen log, a rock face, a dense stand of young conifer, anything that breaks the wind at your back. Wind doesn't just make a fire harder to start. It steals your heat sideways instead of letting it radiate onto you, and it's the difference between a fire that warms you and a fire that just burns fuel for its own sake. Dry ground, slightly elevated. Not a low spot where meltwater or rain collects. Not directly under a snow-loaded branch that can dump on your fire at midnight. Old trappers called that a widowmaker for a reason, and it wasn't just about branches falling on people. And overhead clearance. No low canopy directly above where sparks and heat will scorch it, and no dead standing timber that could come down. The old rule was simple. If you wouldn't sleep under it in a windstorm, don't build a fire under it either. This week's assignment, before we go any further, go stand in your own backyard or the nearest tree line and just practice the walk. Find the spot with your back to a windbreak and dry ground underfoot. That's the whole skill. Most people skip this because it feels like nothing. It's not nothing. It's the foundation everything else sits on. Piece 2. The wood. This is where the mistake 9 out of 10 people make on their first real fire costs them the whole night. And it's not the mistake you'd guess. It's not enough wood. It's the wrong wood, gathered in the wrong order, at the wrong moisture. You need 4 grades gathered before you ever strike a spark, because a fire that goes out while you're off hunting for the next stick is a fire that never really got started. Tinder. The stuff that catches from a spark. Dry grass, birch bark peeled in thin curls, the shredded inner bark of cedar, or what old woodsmen called a bird's nest, a fist-sized ball of the driest, finest material you can find, teased apart until it's almost fluffy. This has to be bone dry. Damp tinder is the single most common reason a fire never gets born in the first place. Kindling. Pencil lead to pencil-thick dry twigs, preferably dead branches still attached to a standing tree, never wood off the ground. Ground wood holds moisture like a sponge, even when it looks dry on the outside. Standing dead wood is your friend. Learn to spot it. Gray, brittle, snaps clean instead of bending. Fuel wood, wrist to forearm thick. And this is where most backyard fire builders get lazy and grab whatever's closest. Split it if you can. A split face dries and catches faster than round bark. And the piece almost nobody gathers on purpose. The all-night logs. Thigh-thick, the driest standing dead hardwood you can find or split. Oak and hickory and ash if you've got them, because dense hardwood burns slow and holds coals. Softwood burns fast and hot and leaves you nothing but ash by 2 a.m. Gather roughly 3 times more of everything than you think you need. That's not folklore, that's just arithmetic. A fire eats faster than a man walking in the dark can feed it. And running out at midnight in freezing weather is how the story of Aldous Kane starts for somebody else. Piece 3. Ignition. No matches. Now the part you came here for. How the old mountain men actually got fire going without a match to their name because matches weren't reliably cheap and dry on the frontier, and they still aren't reliably dry in your pocket after you fall in a creek. Here's your $47, roughly. A ferrocerium rod, about $12. A folding knife or hatchet you likely already own. Some paracord, $10 for 100 feet, and a small tin for homemade char cloth, which costs you nothing but a scrap of cotton fabric and 5 minutes over coals from a fire you already built once. The ferro rod is your workhorse. Scrape it hard with the spine of your knife, not the edge, at a low angle, straight into the heart of your bird's nest tinder. You're not trying to make one big spark. You're trying to make a shower of them. And you want that shower landing inside the nest, not skating across the top of it. The old-timer's trick almost nobody teaches anymore. Don't hold the rod still and drag the striker away from you. Hold the striker still against the tinder and pull the rod backward through it. Keeps your spark shower aimed exactly where you want it instead of flying off into the dirt. Once you've got a coal glowing in that nest, don't blow on it like it's a birthday candle. Cup it in both hands, bring it close to your face, and blow long and steady from underneath, feeding it oxygen the way a bellows would. You'll see smoke thicken, then the whole nest catches at once. That's your moment. Set it down gently into your waiting kindling, don't smother it, and start feeding kindling from the smallest pieces up. Char cloth is your backup and your teacher. Scorched cotton fabric will catch a spark and hold a coal for minutes instead of seconds. giving a beginner far more margin for error than a bird's nest alone. Every trapper's possibles bag carried a tin of it. Make yours this week. Burn a 2-inch cotton square inside a small tin with a pinhole in the lid over your next backyard fire, and you'll have a lifetime supply in your pocket. Flint and steel works the same principle if you don't want to spend on a ferro rod. A piece of high-carbon steel struck against sharp flint or quartz throws the same shower of sparks. Slower to learn, cheaper to own. Either way, the mountain men never once needed a match, and neither do you. Piece 4. The all-night structure. Here's where the store-bought campers usually quit, because this is the piece that takes patience instead of gear. A regular campfire needs tending every 20 minutes. That's fine for an evening around the fire. It is useless for actually sleeping, because the second man falls asleep, that fire starts dying, and cold creeps in exactly when nobody's watching. The old solution wasn't a bigger fire, it was a smarter one, a self-feeding structure that burns for 6, 8, sometimes 10 hours without a hand touching it. Build what old woodsmen called the log cabin gravity feed. Lay 2 thigh-thick hardwood logs parallel on the ground, about 18 inches apart, as your base rails. Between them, build your regular tinder-kindling fuel fire and get it burning strong. Then, as it establishes, lay your longest, driest fuel logs across the top of those 2 rails, perpendicular, stacked 2 or 3 high like a small log cabin roof over the flame. As the bottom logs burn and settle, gravity does your work for you. Each log above drops down into the coals as the one below consumes, feeding itself into the fire automatically all night long without a hand touching it. A variation you'll hear called the upside-down fire flips the order. Biggest logs on the bottom, smallest tinder on top, lit from above so it burns downward slowly through the stack instead of upward and out. Either method does the same job. It turns a fire from something you feed into something that feeds itself. This week, practice this in your own backyard before you ever trust it in real cold. Build it small first. Watch how it settles. Learn the rhythm of it in a place where a mistake just means a smaller fire, not a cold night 12 miles from your truck. Pattern break. Everything up to here your grandfather could have taught you on a Saturday afternoon. Site, wood, spark, structure. 4 pieces. Most homesteaders who've spent any real time outside already know some version of all 4. What's coming next is the piece almost nobody teaches because it isn't about the fire at all. It's about what's happening 6 inches below it, and it's the same piece that took Aldous Kane in 1887 with a fire still burning 6 inches from his hand. Piece 5. The ground barrier. This is the piece the survival shows skip, because a roaring fire makes better footage than a man laying down pine boughs in the dark. Here's the frontier reality nobody wants to hear. The ground will kill you faster than the air ever will. Your body loses heat to the ground beneath you through direct contact, what old Army manuals call conductive loss, far faster than it loses heat to the cold air around you. A 3-foot fire radiating heat onto your face does you almost no good if you're lying directly on frozen dirt, because the earth is pulling warmth out of your back the entire time faster than that fire can put it in. That's what actually happened to Aldous Kane. His fire never failed him. He failed to put anything between his body and the ground, and the cold earth drained him from below while the fire warmed him from above, and the math simply didn't favor him. The mountain man's answer was as old as the method itself. Build a bough bed before you build your fire. A layer of pine or fir boughs laid shingled like feathers, needle side up at least 6 inches thick between your body and the ground. No boughs available, bark slabs, dry leaves piled thick, even your pack and spare clothing stuffed beneath you. Anything that isn't frozen earth touching your skin. There's a second half to this piece almost nobody mentions, and it's the reason experienced woodsmen build their sleeping spot on the opposite side of the fire from where the wind is blowing, angled so radiant heat reaches them without smoke rolling over them all night. Combine that with a reflector, a low wall of stacked green logs or rocks on the far side of your fire, and you bounce heat back at yourself instead of losing half of it to open air behind the flame. Search and rescue instructors still teach this exact principle to this day. Insulate from below before you worry about heat from above. Cold weather, dry site. Real tinder, real kindling, real fuel gathered in advance. Spark from steel, not a match. A structure that feeds itself all night. And underneath all of it, a barrier between your body and the ground that the fire alone was never going to give you. 6 inches of pine boughs. That's what stood between the men who woke up warm and the men who never woke up at all. Bringing it together. So here's your whole method, friend, laid out plain. Pick your site with a windbreak at your back and dry ground underfoot. Gather 3 grades of dry wood plus your all-night hardwood, 3 times more than feels necessary. Strike your spark into a bird's nest of dry tinder with a ferro rod or flint and steel, cupped and fed with slow, steady breath. Build your gravity feed structure so the fire tends itself while you sleep. And before any of that, lay 6 inches of boughs or bark between your body and the frozen earth, because that ground will take everything the fire gives you and ask for more, under $50, a ferro rod, some cord, a tin for char cloth, and a knife most of you already carry. That's the whole entry ticket into a skill that kept men alive on this continent for 300 winters before anybody ever sold a propane heater. This was never really about the fire, neighbor. It was about not needing anybody else's grid, anybody else's gas station, anybody else's battery to stay warm through a night that turns dangerous fast. If the power goes out, you build fire. If your truck breaks down 8 miles from the trailhead in November, you build fire. That's not doom talk. That's just a man who can take care of himself and the people counting on him. You don't have to master all 5 pieces this weekend. Do one thing. This week, go make your char cloth. 10 minutes, 1 tin, 1 scrap of cotton over a fire you were going to build anyway. Carry it in your pocket from now on. That's your first step into a skill your great-grandfather never had to think twice about. Tell me down in the comments, did anybody ever teach you to build fire without matches? Ferro rod, flint and steel, bow drill. Something else your family passed down? Different parts of the country did this differently, and the version that gets the most comments is the one I'm going deep on next. Aldous Kane built a fire that never went out. It just wasn't enough on its own. Now you know the piece he didn't. Don't let it slip past you the way it slipped past him. Next time, the $2 water filtration trick that kept frontier families off dysentery for 100 years, and the decade the bottled water industry made sure your grandmother forgot it. Keep the old ways. They kept us.